Hey guys, welcome to the Comic Den. I'm your host Ace Knuckles, and I just wanted to try some new stuff out today. First off, I got a new mic, so I wanted to test it out. Shout out to Jacob Whittington over at Chronicler177 for introducing me to this mic. It's a Blue Yeti, and the sound's amazing. There's 4 different settings on it. I'm just kind of playing around with it. I'm also wanting to kind of try a new show out. I tried doing the pull list, and the problem is I go inconsistently, and I'm really looking for something to be like a consistent show. So what I'm going to do is it's just going to be what I read this month. So it'll be everything that I read from December 1st to December 31st. And then there might be 1 or 2 that was thrown in from January, but for the most part, I'm going to try to keep it to the month. And I want to do it at the beginning of every month. So it's the beginning of January, so I'm going to do December's. And that's why there might be some overlap, but it's not going to be a big deal. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to kind of show you what we're doing, or show you what I read, talk about it maybe a little bit. Try not to give out too many spoilers, but we'll see. There may be spoilers, so if you're really into these and for some reason you haven't read them, I don't know why a spoiler would occur a month after the comic book came out, but whatever. So these are also going to be alphabetical because that's how I prepare them whenever I get ready to put them up. So first is going to be Avengers, and we have Avengers 10 and 11 here, and these are, they're good. I just I don't know if they're going in a particular direction. I see that there's some stuff going on, and I see that it's building, and I'm hoping it's just a really slow build. I really enjoy that about Jason Aaron, is that he will slow build the crap out of something. He's been slow building the War of Realms for, however many Thor issues have been out, and it seems like the Avengers are kind of maybe starting to tie into that a little bit too. And I'm really excited about it. So the War of Realms comes out in 4 months from whenever this came out. So I'm guessing probably about 3 months. And there's some exciting stuff, and I get that there needs to be action. It can't just all be build-up, so they have to have some sort of action that's assisting in the build-up. And it's pretty good. I mean, their main bad guy, I guess, is Namor. And I don't know a whole lot about him. I know there's a falling out. I know that he kind of sticks to himself. I know that there's a lot going on. There's a lot of history there. And I don't personally know all the history. I just know generalities. I know he flooded Wakanda. I'm not positive why he flooded Wakanda, but it has something to do with him thinking that Black Panther was a dick. So, yeah, I don't know. But, like I said, Avengers, real good story. Next up, we have Batman 59 and 60, and these are for sure building up to something crazy. The way that 59 ends, I'm not going to say it just in case because it is a huge thing. The way 59, or is it 60? Well, crap. Now I'm going to have to look. 60, the way 60 ends is insane. I've got 61 and 62 upstairs, or at least 61 upstairs. But yeah, what they're building to is amazing and disturbing, and it's gonna be, I mean, insane's the best way to put it. It's crazy, the stuff that they're pulling in and the stuff that they're doing, and the last issue that I read kind of threw me off a little bit, but I think I kind of see where they're going. Tom King is probably my favorite Batman writer ever at this point, and it's because he does have that long-form story writing, and I know a lot of people say nowadays that, well, this generation needs short little sound bites, and whenever you do a podcast, it has to be 20 minutes or less, or even smaller than that. The people can only consume small little chunks of information. I mean, I don't think that's true. Some of my favorite podcasts are 3-4 hours long. I enjoy doing my podcasts, and they're, I think 3 hours is the longest I've done it. And so I think having this overarching story with all of these tiny stories in there, it lends itself to much better writing. Whereas I see some comics and it might just be that they're just hanging on by the skin of their teeth, and so each story arc has to be something big and something awesome. Whereas this can kind of level everything out, and everything doesn't have to be a huge battle scene or a big reveal, but whenever those big reveals do come, or that big fight scene does come, it's a huge payoff, and it's so worth it. Next, we have several detective comics, and I'm actually going to we'll do this. So these are the last two by Robinson, and this was an interesting story. It seems like it's definitely just a story for the sake of it being a story. It was for sure filler, because now Tomasi is taking over, and he's going to run it at least through 1000. I would assume he's going to run it a lot longer than that. And I'm super excited because Tomasi is an amazing writer in his own right. And so I'm real excited to see what he can do with Batman, and I like the direction. But Robinson had an interesting story arc with Two-Face, which is a character I haven't read a whole lot of personally. My Batman is pretty confined to the Dark Knight comics from Frank Miller, and then I've got Tom King, Scott Snyder, James Tynion. That's pretty much where I hopped on to comics. Whenever I was a little kid, I was all Marvel. It was just all Spider-Man and X-Men. So yeah, whenever I got back into comics, then that's when I started hitting up Batman and stuff like that. So my knowledge of Batman is not vast, but the Batman that I like, I really like. And then we have Tomasi, who took over this one. This one was interesting too. It's another take on Bruce Wayne's parents' death, and not that they're being killed again, but some shit's going down, and it gets pretty insane. Again, I know I use that word a lot, but I mean, there's giant monsters, there's explosions, there's a lot of action, and it all ends with, hints towards a certain villain returning, which there can really only be one villain that shows up for the 1000th issue. And as cool as Action Comics 1000 was, where you had all these tiny little stories that were all thrown into one, I would almost rather prefer just a big, mega issue of one giant story, instead of a bunch of tiny little anthology stories that don't necessarily tie in anything. They're kind of interesting, but they don't further any story along. I mean, I get what you're trying to do, but I wasn't into it that much. So I'm hoping that's not how Detective Comics goes. I hope it actually furthers the story, maybe closes out this first story arc, and then Tomasi can take over and keep growing the Detective Comics line. I really liked the Bat Family aspect of Detective Comics, and I know the Bat Family is kind of disbanded, but I think there's still some room for them to develop the Signal, which it seemed like Scott Snyder tried, but it was only like a 3-story or a 3-issue story arc, and so there's only so much you can do with that, and they haven't really done anything with him yet. Maybe in the All-Star Batman they're doing more, and I know they're doing a little bit more, but I don't know. I'm just not really feeling like they know what direction to go with him yet. So I'd really like to maybe see some of that develop. also with like Orphan, and I know they're doing, I think it's like The Outcast or something like that, and maybe that's where that's going, but who knows. Another one I was super excited to pick up was The Batman Who Laughs. This is issue number 1. It's supposed to be a 6-issue miniseries, and I don't know how this ties into everything as far as a timeline for Batman, and I have no idea how it's going to end, because this one issue was a complete surprise. I was not expecting it in the least. So whenever I did read it, to say, holy shit, this happened in issue number 1, it wasn't like build, then issue number 3, something like this happens. Snyder went all out and said, nope, issue number 1, we're going to, destroy everything you ever knew about what Batman is going to be. And again, I don't know how this is going to affect the DC landscape or Batman landscape as a whole, but it's going to be a real interesting ride. Next, we have 3 issues of The Flash. We have 58, 59, and 60. And these have been real exciting to read, because it's almost like Jeff Johns' run on the Green Lantern, where he introduced all the different Green Lantern, well, not Green Lantern, of course, he introduced all the different emotional spectrum cores, and here we have Barry Allen exploring the world so that he can figure out more about the forces, and it's just great that DC's expanding. I know they already had kind of a intergalactic thing with the Green Lanterns, but I mean, for sure, Marvel has more of a cosmic presence than DC does, and so it's nice to see not only the Flash mythos expanding, and how that has ripple effects throughout the rest of the DC landscape, but to see how it's affecting, Justice League Odyssey, Justice League in general, to see how it's affecting the Flash, and it's back. They've got the Legion of Doom back, and how now all of a sudden Lex Luthor has these Sage Force powers, and how that's coming into play. So everything in the whole DC landscape is being shifted, and I think it's for the better. I mean, I've been wondering how long DC can ride this rebirth wave, and it seems like they've got a pretty good handle on it. And that's with them having a ton of events going on. They have Drowned Earth right now. They still have Doomsday Clock going. They've got Heroes in Crisis going. Then you have not necessarily, you don't have an event, but I mean, the Flash storyline is having huge ramifications. The Batman storyline is having huge ramifications. You have a mini-series within the Batman storyline with the Batman Who Laughs, and that's going to have huge ramifications. And so it's amazing to show how you don't necessarily have to have an event to change a landscape, and you don't actually have to have something major go on for it to affect everything else in the DC universe. One downside to that is if you just happen to not pick up the Flash, then you're kind of missing out, and you're going to miss things along the way. But why would you ever not pick up the Flash? I mean, if anything else, this is great advertisement. So when Lex Luthor says, well, now I have the Sage Force, and there's that little asterisk, and it says, read Flash, number blah, 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 then yeah, I'm for sure going to pick up the Flash and catch up on that. So it just seems like they're doing all the right things. Now, are there places where there could be improvements? Yeah, obviously. I mean, there's always places that you could have improvement, but the fact that they've gotten 60 issues in, I mean, that's already doing better than the New 52 did. And not only that, but Rebirth then, excuse me, Rebirth, the way they explained it, now makes the New 52 better. So you've just done all of these things to improve, 10 years worth of comics. It's amazing, and I'm hoping this starts to carry over into the DC cinematic universe. Let me know what you think about that too. I watched Aquaman over Christmas break. I thought it was amazing. I loved it. I think if they can ride that wave and kind of go with that and bring Wonder Woman in with it, make a Flash movie as quick as you can. Don't make a Cyborg movie because nobody cares about Cyborg. And then take a break from Batman and Superman. That's where all the controversy seems to be. Keep Ben Affleck. I personally think Ben Affleck is a great Batman as long as he has good writers. So chill out with Batman, get an amazing team together, and then write good Batman, and then write good Superman, and build up the rest of your universe so that you can then go back to those two things. It doesn't have to be Batman and Superman carry the entire DC universe. You have other pieces to the puzzle now that you can shift around, that you can move, that you can build up something great. And I'd really like to just see them do that rather than try to hammer Batman and Superman in everybody's faces. And you have to feel like you have to reboot them all the time, and you have to recast them. And now you have 4 different universes going on, and it's all just one big convoluted thing. What they need to do is consolidate and just do it right. Take your time, go slow, and do it right. And I feel like that's what they did with Aquaman. They brought in Jeff Johns. They adapted his storyline. He was very involved in the entire process. Keep doing that. If you're going to make a comic book movie, then have the comic book writer there to have a say in it so that he can tell you, no, the fans aren't going to like that. This is what the fans want to see. This is what went right with my comic. This is what bombed with my comic. I mean, learn from it. I don't understand why you wouldn't. But I digress. Moving on. We have God of War #1. And I know that God of War #2 is also out. I have not picked that up yet. I just kind of wanted to test this out and see. And it seems like it's going to be an interesting story. I mean, I read through it pretty quick. And it's interesting. It's good. It's definitely picking up before the game begins. So before God of War 4, but after God of War 3, whenever he's moved to the Netherlands or wherever it is he's at, up in wherever Vikings are. So yeah, it's definitely a good book. I think I might hold off on getting the rest of them, and I might just pick up the trade. But I wanted that #1 just to see if I was interested. And I for sure am. I just don't know that I can dedicate $4 every month to follow this story for an arc. Especially when, in a few months I'll just be able to get the trade, and it'll be just as good. Next, we have Green Lanterns. Or The Green Lantern. This is one that I have very mixed feelings about. For one, I'm not at all into the art. Like, the art just has me out of it. I'll just kind of show you. It's not bad. I'm just not into it. Like, it just doesn't do it for me. And for me, if the art doesn't do it for me, then I'm out of the story. And also the writing is weird. It's real choppy, it's real jumpy, it's all over the place. I had high hopes from Morrison. I'm going to see this through the first story arc. This one's definitely better than the first one. And maybe the third one will get better than this one. And, by the end of it, it might be an amazing story. But right now, they've just kind of dumped me into it. And, again, the art's throwing me off. The story's throwing me off. The writing style's throwing me off. So, yeah, I don't know how long this one's going to last. Next, we have Iron Man. These stories have been amazing. Dan Slott's taken over the writing. And I've been wondering how they're going to go with Iron Man, because this is like the fourth number one that they've had in a couple years. You had Infamous Iron Man. You had Invincible Iron Man, which was actually Ironheart, and Tony Stark was gone. And then you had the Invincible Iron Man back, but then it was Tony Stark who was back. And then you have Tony Stark Iron Man. And it's getting kind of crazy. But what I do see is each one of these comics so far has been loosely tied to one another, but they've been introducing a lot of new concepts or revisiting old concepts. And they're doing a very good job showing that Iron Man's world is about to explode with excitement. And there's also just this little underlying line of a story that's happening, and it's enough to tie in all the rest of the stuff. And who knows, maybe that underlying line is going to be a huge piece of storyline. I mean, I don't know, but I think it's going to be awesome. And they've reintroduced Arno Stark, and that was probably one of the coolest covers that I saw was last month's. And I think Arno's going to have a huge role in maybe another Armor Wars. I don't know. It's going to be awesome, though. So we have Justice League Odyssey 2 and 3. These I picked up. I had picked up the Justice League storyline whenever it was Justice League Rebirth, and I wasn't really into the story, and I think a lot of other people weren't necessarily into the story either. But whenever they cracked the source wall in Dark Knight's Metal, I didn't necessarily want to go with the Justice League Dark, even though Wonder Woman's a good story. Swamp Thing is interesting. It just didn't seem like something I would be into. And then, I'm not sure what the other is. It might just be Justice League. I'm not sure. But it didn't interest me either. But Justice League Odyssey, I think since it's so removed from the rest of the DC universe, that it's actually turning out to be a really good story. It's intriguing. I have a lot of questions, and I'm kind of like looking sideways at it because I don't quite know how it's going to turn out. It could either be an awesome payoff, or it could be utter crap and I wasted all this time on Justice League Odyssey. But right now, it's got my attention. Right now, it's on my radar, and I can't wait to read more of it to figure out whether I should be like skeptical hippo, or whether I should, be real excited. So next, I have Rick and Morty, and I love the Rick and Morty comics, minus this one. I was super excited about it until it was just a slightly different variation of Pickle Rick whenever that happened. Like, it's the exact same story, except slightly different. I wasn't into it. But this one with the Vindicators, This is the first time they ever interacted. And I didn't realize it until I read this, even though I've watched, the seasons of Rick and Morty, that they never showed the first time they interacted. Rick just always hated the Vindicators, and they had talked about a previous time they had hung out with each other. So this is the first. This is the first time they ever met each other, the first time they ever interacted, and why Rick Sanchez hates the Vindicators and the Vindicators hate Rick Sanchez. Amazing story. Again, with the exception of the Pickle Rick, I love everything that they've come out with. Even the Pocket Like You Stole It, the D&D that they came out with, all of them are amazing stories, and the writing on it is just insane. Next, we've got Superman 5 and Superman 6. I have mixed feelings about these. Okay, for one, the art in Superman 6 is amazing. The page composition, this is just a little bit, all of it is like this. This is the entire story. Just like that. It's huge splash pages. There might be some panels, but the panels bleed into other panels, and it just makes for an overall amazing experience whenever you're reading through it. It's twinged with a little bit of sadness, though, and also a little bit of confusion, because Jonathan Kent had left with his grandpa to go into space, and now he's back, and he's definitely hit a growth spurt. I'm not sure how old he is or how long he was gone or any of that stuff. Brian Michael Bendis has been doing weird things with the Kent family. Like Lois left with Jonathan and his grandpa, and then whenever they got back, Lois had her own apartment, and she still wanted to be married to Superman, but she wanted to be, separated. And I don't know how I feel about them doing that to Lois and Clark. I don't know that I'm into that part of the story. And then Jonathan Kent coming back and being so much older. Again, I don't know how old he is. He just looks taller and bigger. What does that mean for the Super Sons? Are the Super Sons over? Are we never seeing any Super Sons again? I mean, I know they have their Maxi series going on now, but I love those stories. Now it looks like they're not going to be there anymore. And it's a sad day for me, because like I said, those are really, really fun stories. But also, I don't know how this fits in with the timeline, because if he's grown that much, then why hasn't Damian grown that much? And so I don't know how it works with comic book timelines, because, you could go 5 years writing a comic, and then only not even a year's passed in actual comic book years. So I don't know how it works. I also don't know how I feel about it. And I mean, I kind of talked about it already. Action Comics, number 1005. Again, I think Bendis is doing a good job. I love how Action Comics is vaguely about Superman, but mostly about Clark. It makes for a whole different dynamic. So you already have Superman, so now you have the other half of him. So it's almost like you're writing two sides of the same story. Even though these aren't the same story, there's a whole nother thing going on. The only tie-in is that Jonathan had left in both stories. So Like I said, it's really good, and I'm interested to see where it's going. It's piqued my interest enough that I'm for sure gonna stick around. And I love Superman stories, and I love action comic stories, even though people call it corny and stuff like that. I really enjoy what's been going on ever since Rebirth with Superman. And speaking of Super Sons, here we have Super Sons number 5 of 12. These have been some of the most fun stories I think I've ever read. It's got serious undertones, and yet it's so playful and so fun, and the art in it is amazing, and you can just tell that the entire team has a blast whenever doing this. So yeah, go out and pick up everything that is Super Sons, because it's going to be one of your favorite stories ever. Next, we have Thor number 7, Thor number 8. These, whenever the new run of Thor came out, I was a little bit skeptical because the art is just insane in them, and it's kind of chilled out a little bit in these. They were real psychedelic early on, and that's fine. It's one of those things where it was done well enough that I didn't care. It didn't take away from the story. It wasn't too distracting. But yeah, God, these stories are so good, and I don't understand how Jason Aaron keeps doing this. So that, again, they're building up to the War of Realms, and again, I'm hoping it's not a cross. I'm just, God, please don't let it be a crossover. Don't make it a crossover. You can make it an event and have tie-ins, but don't make the tie-ins important. Don't make the tie-ins something that you have to read to understand the story, like they did in Civil War 2, because that was stupid and nobody's going to buy all those comics. So Jason Aaron just needs to keep his hands on the entire thing. It can be an event. Just make it a Thor event. It only needs to be Thor. It doesn't need to be all of the Avengers. It doesn't need to be the British Avengers or the West Coast Avengers or whoever else is in there. It just needs to be Thor. And I think that's the only way that the War of Realms makes it through as a successful event. Next, we have The Walking Dead. And I've speculated as to how much longer The Walking Dead has before it goes away. 186 issues is insane. And the conflicts just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And this story could either be the end of The Walking Dead, or, I could also see where this just makes everything more escalated. But they're actually into territory that's, you're talking thousands and thousands and thousands of people, all in one civilization, and if this one exists, that means others exist. So the scale of war has just escalated. The capability of people to war has also escalated. So again, this could be they come in, they find peace, and everybody lives happily ever after, or it kind of goes to just bigger and bigger and bigger until it, Rick Grimes is running America. I don't know how you end it in a big, satisfying way, other than they eventually find a place that they can settle down that has strong enough walls. And maybe it'll just never end. There's always that possibility, too, that Kirkman just says, all right, I'm done with this project, somebody else can have it. Or they do spin-offs, or whatever else happens. But this is another one. This is the last one that I've got. It's the Return of Wolverine, and this has been oddly satisfying. Um, it's it I didn't want to like it whenever it first came out, and I told myself I wasn't going to buy it. But then it ended up in my pull list, so I was like, fine, whatever. I'll read the first issue, and then I'll just have it so that I have the number one. And then the number one was intriguing, so I got the number two and the number three, and I'm just going to keep getting them because now I'm hooked. Charles Soule is giving us all the Wolverines we've ever wanted, and he's doing it in a way that we fell in love with Wolverine to begin with, where we know nothing about him, and he's just there. And I mean, we'll get the origin story a lot quicker than we did when Wolverine was first created, but it's one of those things where it's definitely going back to basics. And I thought his hot claws were going to be stupid, but I found that I kind of really like them, even though they haven't explained any of it. So it could just be that my interest is piqued, which is why I like it. But who knows? I mean, that's all of them. I know it was a lot. We're 36 minutes into this thing. And this is this is something I'm gonna want to do. I'm gonna try it out, see what people think. If people don't respond to it, people don't like it, I might not do it anymore. I might still do it. I've always wanted to do something like a pull list, but I don't go every week. When I go after I get paid, it's inconsistent. I also have to bring everything downstairs, and I read all of my stuff upstairs, so it's just me traveling back and forth up and downstairs with all of my comics. So this seems like the easiest solution. I'll read for a month, bring down the whole stack, sort them out alphabetically. That way, after I do this, I can just put them up. So yeah, let me know what you think in the comments. If you like this channel, check out all my other videos. Hit the subscribe button, hit the little gray bell so that you can get notifications every time I post a new video. Other than that, I got nothing. I'm out, guys.